People say the UK is bad vibes, but why? Maybe it's because we're always being watched. Nobody wants to be bait. But again, why? Britain has a widely recognized surveillance culture. In just 2015, the British Security Industry Association estimates that there's around 4 million to 5.9 million cameras. And this is more important than you may think, because it's not just the language within the UK, but how some people choose to present. JB has a bar where he says, "I've been hiding my face because I hate being bait. I'm like a ninja, she should know be." Now, outside that being a bar, I genuinely think he's speaking to just a cultural norm in here. Here's a recreation of a conversation I had the other day. Do you know what any of this means? Where's ends? Who's my man? Of course I'm not dumb. I know what ends is, but it's the fact that people rarely communicate clearly on where they're going or what they're doing. Because really, where's yard? Is that your thing? What does that even mean? Is that your girl or just someone you're moving to? I ask these dumb questions not because I want to interrogate the language, well, I do, but because there's an overarching element of vagueness and it's culturally by design. Because not everybody needs to know where you live. Not everybody needs to know my man or who you're chatting to. All of this language is derivative of a culture that's very protective of their privacy. It's also worth noting that most of this language is derivative of Jamaican patois. Jamaican patois has had an undeniable influence on how most Londoners speak. But what's more interesting to me is that that is the language that stuck. Because patois is more than Mandem adjacent slang, vague allusions to pom-pom and your neighborhood. Yet one of the most prevalent in British culture is the word babe. But the extent to which it's found its way in British culture is a byproduct of the UK's heavy surveillance culture. In a country that teaches you you're always being watched, silence is security and ambiguity becomes protection. The backbone of perceived criminality within this country is to see someone and not know what they're doing. See most white people's idea of a roadmap. Instead of viewing secrecy as a response to heavy surveillance, it's instead viewed as a statement of criminal intent. The way this intersects into race within Britain then kind of becomes obvious, with black British boys being disproportionate targets of stop and search by the police for this exact reason. The Joint Culpability Act often being a means of grouping a bunch of black people into perceived gangs for arrest. Race and class have a lot of intersection within the UK, and the simple byproduct of a surveillance culture that criminalizes difference and a lack of conformity is naturally going to be that it targets black people.
I know that London in particular is probably one of the most like CCTV heavy places in the world. That's a fact. I know that kind of post Tony Blair, I want to say there's an ASBO generation thing, and there was a lot of surveillance of that was coupled with young people in particular kind of not having places to be, not having places to go, the closing of youth clubs, all this kind of stuff. So young people in urban environments find themselves at the receiving end of being suspicious, because most people don't like kids. Like, they don't like teenagers. Like, they see them and they like, so I feel like there's definitely a sort of a political thing which goes back to like the early 21st century, that is stoking this suspicion and this kind of like, we need to be aware of the threat of antisocial behavior.
When Pree Patel speaks on how she wants more police to make criminals feel fear, and conveniently at the same time, stop and search rates of black people go up, it's not a coincidence, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be insidious. The backbone of Britain's empire was undeniably racist, and the country is still grappling with that institutional backbone, so it's not really a surprise, it's just something that we need to be very honest about. The fact that a lot of the language we're talking about is carrying blackness in its origin speaks directly to that. Now I'm going to put a pin in that so we can dive more into the specific ways that this culture of conformity and surveillance actually functions. I had the pleasure of interviewing Kauna Tawia recently. She's the leader of the Neuronar Network, a network designed for queer and people of color, creating a support system and community for people that grapple with their neurodivergence in a neurotypical world. No, but it's fine. I enjoy it because this is how I communicate.
Okay, same. Yeah. Like even with Neuro Noir, like it's turned into that online community that we built, that we were like, oh, I didn't realize there's other people like us, into how can I turn this and have us meet in person and actually be friends and have community and then have these conversations with people who get us, So that's essentially what the spirit behind Neuro Noir was. I made for the first time on Instagram, I made a video about being a black woman with autism, and then that video had like a bit like semi-virality, and then I had so many new followers and comments of people saying same, you
Yeah,
know, where, you know, I didn't realize there were so many of us. See all these comments, then someone was like, we should all meet up, and I was like, that's a good idea. And that's where Neurodivergence started. So I was like, okay, first we'll get a group chat, build this community, you know, see where everyone is. And then once I gained like enough interest and knew where everyone was, we started off, we did events in London at first. And then now we've done Manchester a few times, and we did Essex for the first time in March. So yeah, it was really lovely. Yeah.
You really, and one of the things I've always really admired about it is that you managed to create like this really nice safe space.
Thank
right?
you.
And no, just obviously like, yeah, just from what I saw, right? And I went on YouTube channel and I saw you were promoting it for shorts, etc.
Yeah.
So then I go on the Instagram, I was like, oh, you've got these events.
Yeah.
So, you've got this nice little logo up there. You know, like there's a whole.
An estimated 15 to 20% of the UK population is neurodivergent, equating to 13 million people. With that in mind, only 1 in 16 autistic adults in the UK are in full-time employment. These figures matter because they once again speak to a disparity in stability. The secondary school system is designed to prepare young people for the work world. But if it's not really accomplishing that, then what is it really designed to do? Black individuals are often not treated with the same level of compassion as their whiter counterparts. That is no different when it comes to neurodivergence and mental health care. Amongst the 5 broad ethnic groups, known rates of detention for the Black or Black British group were over 4 times of that of the white group. This is one of the key facts highlighted in the Mental Health Act statistics, annual figures for 2019 to 2020, to NHS England. And it's a prime example of the intersectionality in healthcare and how it affects the level of care received in the Black community. Now, there's a connection there with detention I want to talk about. Now, I'm not inherently arguing that detention as a means of punishment is a means of creating conformity, but it will make sense as following. In my secondary school, there were tiers. Tier 1 was a 1-hour detention. Tier 2 was a 2-hour detention. Tier 3 was isolation, and Tier 4 was exclusion. I have experienced all of these in my lifetime, believe it or not. The detentions are self-explanatory. You stay in school after school for an hour. You don't get to go home with all your friends. Exclusion is a little bit more self-explanatory. You're legally not allowed anywhere near the school. People used to treat exclusion like it was nothing, but they send you a letter basically saying, hey, you're legally not allowed near our school for a week, basically. See, I got excluded for a day, so this process seemed very silly to me, but being excluded isn't a forced day off school. It's institutionally excluding a student away from their peers and education as a punishment for bad behavior. But none of this really compares to me to Tier 3. Isolation was something I only really experienced for I think a day or 2. I never wanted to go back. I would rather have been excluded than to go back to isolation. You want to know what isolation is? It's a tiny room with 5 desks. You sit at a desk and you're forced to stare at it. You can't look left or right. They give you your textbooks and you stare there with no communication with anyone for 8 hours. And at the end of the day, you get to leave shortly after everyone else. No hyperbole, it is a disgusting practice.
When you get to this culture of isolation rooms, what that speaks to is there is a pipeline from school exclusion to the criminal justice system. Black and brown, mixed race, African, Caribbean students, boys and girls, are significantly, disproportionately more likely to be excluded from school. And that is for no reason other than a breakdown in the communities, but also the fact that schools are dealing with these biases and stereotypes that look at Black students and find ways of punishing them for behaviors that are deemed to be, problematic. That was the last time that I cried at school. I remember I was at a school and I saw a year 7 boy in the isolation room because he'd come back. It was just after COVID and his hair was too short. And I was like, what is happening here? And I went and I chatted with this kid and he's year 7. It's like his first experience with school, really. And he just had like a 0.5 or whatever. And as someone that's had a 0.5, I was like, what is, and he was put in that room.
How do you get
his
punished
parents
for
had been
having
notified.
your hair's too short?
Listen, yeah. So I remember in tears going into the corridor, teachers trying to calm me down. I'm thinking, do I get angry or do I be upset? I go to the head teacher, crying, and then he gets taken out. But that isolation, it's no joke. There's a traumatic thing about being removed from, about being treated as a criminal entity by the people that are really there to protect your well-being.
It's horrible. It is horrible. I remember I went in and I saw some people that I hadn't seen in ages, right? I was like, Taiwo, what are you doing here? He said, David, I've been in here for 2 months. I was like, what?
Oh my life.
And so that's another element of it. Like, they are completely removed.
It's still clear from the high number of black bodies currently detained under the Mental Health Act that there is a distinct link between black neurodivergence and inequality when compared to other ethnic groups. It's worth noting that this culture of conformity isn't solely derivative of British culture. Oftentimes, West African cultures can perpetuate these cycles. One of the conversations I found myself having with Daniela is how you navigate these experiences that are inherently racialized and how we're culturally taught to respond to them.
Speaking of, like, I grew up with a mum who would say to me, if you ask too many questions, you'll go mad. So I learned that what she didn't realize she was doing, she taught me that being a critical thinker was a bad thing. And being a critical thinker is probably the only thing that every single person that's a minority should be. Yes. So imagine, like, I'm coming into this world, I'm black, I'm autistic, I'm queer, I'm all of these things, neurodivergent, and I'm being raised to be told that I shouldn't ask questions or I'll go mad. So instead, what ended up happening was the reverse, is that my anxiety has ended up being so crippling, because instead of being like, why do I feel this way? Why does this make me uncomfortable? Why did they say that? I've been taught, just stay quiet, just don't say anything, don't ask.
And that's very common. That's very common.
common.
I find, and let me know if this is overstepping, I find that this seems to be a very common thing, specifically with black women.
Yeah.
Right, where they're kind of, like, not just the whole, like, just stay, be quiet, obey, listen. But
shrinking
also
ourselves.
shrink yourself and don't express how you feel and don't ask questions and don't, if you're put in that situation, just don't do anything about it, right? And that's dangerous for many reasons.
To some degree, I do feel like we've kind of been raised in a way where we're encouraged not to challenge things. And I hate to bring religion into this, but I've been really struggling with my understanding of, like, how I perceive religion.
Morning, Mum. This solar morning, dear. You are blessed and highly favored.
Amen. Mum, can I...
No weapon formed against you shall prosper.
Amen. Mum,
you are the head and not the tail.
Amen.
God will grant you wisdom that surpasses all human understanding.
The first and second generation of black immigrants coming to the country post-colonialism often taught these ideas of silence and being docile.
Your mother calls you Mame. I'm the eldest of 3 sisters, and it's what my mother called me. You're Ghanaian? I am indeed, which means I'm well aware of the importance of names in our culture. In many ways, they're given to us in an attempt to speak to our future. Growing up, I had many friends named Glory, Patience, Wisdom, Comfort. It seems there is a link between our names and our supposed destiny. We could apply that thinking to the name Mame, the responsible one, the woman, the mother, often before her time.
In a study of the British Journal of Social Work, it argues, black African families in the UK are parenting in a fear of being penalised by the authorities due to cultural differences and institutional racial misconceptions. Some of these cultural differences are obvious and probably worth questioning, like, I don't know, don't beat your kids. But some of these are just in perception. My dad was quite conservative, very conservative actually, but he was able to identify and tell me many times growing up that I was going to have to work twice as hard, that there was a way that people were going to inherently see me. And in order to counteract that, you need to be the best academically. The byproduct of this is that we end up inadvertently becoming champions of British respectability politics. We are not taught to confront or ask questions about the systems and ideas we're being sold. We're instead told to navigate them. And through that navigation, we find ourselves often perpetuating those very same cultural ideas.
How do you feel about that name, Maddie? I think I hate what it means and what it's done to me. What has it done to you? It made me grow up when I should have had more time. It made my dad overlook me when I was a child, my mum leave me behind, and my brother get away with doing the bare minimum. It made me lonely, and it made me sad. It made me responsible and guilty. It made me someone, if given the choice, I wouldn't want to be.
But also just then you couple that with being in this country where there's a big culture of conformity. Something I think about a lot is, you know, obviously my dad, my family, they traveled here and they're like, yeah, you know, we love it here.
Yeah,
Place is great.
Yeah.
Right? And a part of me, I was going, oh, why do they like this place so much? Like, what's the deal? And obviously we talk about multiculturalism and this, that, and the third. But there's also a very strong culture here of, hey, like, there's a way we're supposed to act. Fit in.
Yeah.
My dad would say things like, oh yeah, like, you know, I mean, most people heard this, you gotta work twice as hard, you know, they're gonna treat you some type of way and you're just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was a weird one because my dad seemed very aware of the dynamics, but he was very accepting of them.
Yeah.
And to the extent to which it is hard to stand up for yourself, and it is hard to go, actually this thing does make me unhappy, or actually I do want to change this thing, I do want to be critical of this thing. And it's hard to do that when you are in a culture that says, hey, just stay in the box, right? And so that's very difficult. I don't mean to take your thunder.
No, you didn't take my thunder at all, because I actually agree. It's like, I feel like a lot of our parents, and at the end of the day, like, there's an aspect of me that's super grateful, because as much as I can say, you know, I feel like with what you're saying, it's almost like they're being complicit. Like, you know, it's almost like they've accepted this is their position and this is just what it is. When really there's power in numbers, there's so many of us, and with numbers we can be able to start building that voice, or at least teach our children how to be that voice. But I also understand to a degree where when there's like immigration involved and it's, you know, there's paperwork involved, I completely understand. Like I value, you know, the work that they've done for us and everything. With that out the way, so so anyway, no, seriously.
There's also an entirely separate conversation to be had about what this does with our relationship to our West African heritage and how we perceive it, but that's kind of for a different video. The idea of the Nigerian model minority was something that came up in a discussion I had with Hyphenated History, I believe 2 years ago. And I'm finding it rearing its head into this conversation about British conformity.
You know, the Nigerians that came here in the fallout of the Biafra War or the Biafra War are not the same ones that came here 15 years ago. So I think the conversation is beginning to be a little bit more sophisticated about explaining where the differences are coming from. But it's not all the way there. I think there are still these perceptions about Africans being this model minority, high group of achievers, but they're also now moving into some of the similar stereotyping that Caribbean people had to face of being criminalized. And then there's also some of the same struggles in the school system, which directly contradicts this idea of being high achievers. Because if you're putting people in lower sets, or if you're discriminating against people based on how they speak to one another, you're doing the same thing to them that you were doing to Caribbean kids. And I think some people just cannot ignore the overt racism of it anymore. They used to just singularly blame Caribbean families of, oh, they're not educationally minded, they don't care. And it's like, no matter which way you turn it, it's becoming unavoidably obvious for African people as well, because it's like, oh, even with this model minority myth that we may have internalized, even with this bootstrap mentality that we may have arrived here with, which, yeah, so did Caribbean people, but neither set of countries have great welfare systems or anything like that. You do you're on your own. Yeah. But one set of people's politics is vastly different to another set of people's politics. Why is that? And I think now it's beginning to become a little bit more clear for people. And I would say especially millennial and Gen Z African.
Yeah. Elitism is deeply ingrained into British culture, and it's one of the most apparent ways in which social categories are formed. I realize this most with the word BTEC. For those who don't know, BTEC is a type of academic qualification. It's an alternative to A-levels and GCSE. It's more coursework than exams. That's not really how we use it. We use BTEC to call things bootleg, to call things bad. The fact that this became a normalized part of our slang does speak to something. Why is there an alternate means of academic pursuit used as a pejorative insult? Why is being in Set 4 maths a diss? The same reason we have uniforms, the same reason we police hairstyles and language and ideas within these institutions. It allows us to exclude others so we can begin to feel more special. Earlier in this video, I alluded to the idea that we have a very strong surveillance culture within the UK. There are at least 12 CCTV cameras on every double-decker London bus. The Cheshire Report claims that the average person on a typical day would be seen by 70 CCTV cameras. Most homes, at least in my area, have those doorbell cameras. I cannot stress enough, this is the culture. An overall culture of distrust to the general public. It's why we talk about nitties and crackheads and roadmen and being bait in a very derogatory way. Because Britain is conditioning us to be suspicious of anyone who is different, anyone who stands out, anyone who is not like this. Suspicion of outsiders is deeply ingrained into British culture. There's a campaign called See It, Say It, Sort It. It was launched in 2016 by the British Transport Police. It's on all the British train services. I'll play it.
If you see something that doesn't look right, speak to staff or text British Transport Police on 61016. We'll sort it. See it, say it, sorted.
If you see something that doesn't look right, speak to staff or text the British Transport Police.
This plays in your ear once every 5 minutes. In its first year, the campaign led to a 90% increase in reports to the police by the public, and within 3 years, calls and texts to British Transport Police had increased by 365%. Let's not mince words here. This culture is real. This feeling of being watched is very real. The irony being, this didn't actually lead to any real decrease in crime.
This is something I found out in my research, was that advertising specifically for transport can be quite expensive, right? I'm like, well, why is it so expensive? That makes sense. Okay, you have a strong work culture. This is the one place where everyone going to work, for the most part, right, doing a 9 to 5 or whatever, they're gonna be on the underground, they're gonna be on the overground, they're gonna be using some form of British transport. And the thing you're always going to hit is see it, say it, sort it. You know, if you see something suspicious, report it to the British Transport Police. Like, I know the full thing off by heart, just because, yeah, they say it every 5-10 seconds.
You got like, what is suspicious? That's my question. When it said if you see something suspicious, first of all, who are you in that sentence? What is the archetypal you? Is it a middle class, wealthy white person? Is it a kid from the ends? Is it me? Is it you? Like, who is you? Because you is not everyone. So what is suspicious? Because if I see a group of kids walking around, I might not be suspicious because I know these kids and I'm like, I grew up on an estate and it's like, I'm not suspicious. But there's another part of me that's been conditioned to see that as suspicious. If I see a black man walking down the street towards me at night with a hoodie on, is that suspicious? We've been conditioned to see that as suspicious. And so this culture of constantly saying, see it, say it, sort, it almost creates a slight anxiety. It creates the justification for feeling like we should be on edge. Because I don't know why else you keep on saying it.
It's the interest in balaclavas. It's the hyper-secrecy embedded in our language. It's the need to salvage as much as your privacy as humanly possible. It's the graffiti on all the buildings, whether it's a high street or a train track. This colonial ruin is an artist's playground for expression. But that backdrop is a response to surveillance and conformity. The UK Safety Act is causing so much outcry for a reason. This isn't a sudden occurrence. It's embedded deeply within our society. The question of whether it will change is dependent on how willing the people of this country are to simply not conform to the status quo. How willing are we to question our suspicion of others? How willing are we to embrace the differences of others? And what steps are we taking to ensure that those differences, whether they be through race, class, or neurodivergence, are actually being accounted for instead of punished?
Stars in my pocket, dreaming about making my